Hi Year 8s. Once you have completed the outline of your drawing, so when I say outline, I mean the general outline of the objects, as you can see here, with the oil can, the music box over here, and the tin in the background. But I also mean little bits of detail. So if we look closer, the texture, the scratches on this back tin, the peeling paint on the back wall, the patina on this object. And the little picture, I think it looks like a landscape on this object. So once you've completed all the outline on your original photo, the next step is to start shading. Now when we start shading, we need to think about 3 different things. So the first thing is the light source. So when we look at the original photo and we look at where the light source is coming from, we first have to look at the objects in the foreground sitting on the table. So when we look at these objects, we can see where the light hits the objects directly. So on this little music box, you can see towards the left here, it's white. So we can assume that that's the light hitting that object directly. On this object in the middle, we can see the light hitting the top corner, the curve on this rounded edge, and the bottom left edge. And then finally on the oil can, you can see the white here. On this, you can see this section is a lot lighter, and then down inside the shape, the tin is a lot darker. And then when we look further into the background, we can see shadow towards the bottom right of each object. So we can see shadow along here, shadow here, and we can also see a bit of reflective shadow happening on the table, as well as the light. So light, medium, dark tone are really important, but light is the most important. And the light tone makes the objects in the foreground jump forward away from the peeling paint on the back wall. So if we look at the coloured picture, we can see the same thing. So the light is coming from the top left. So we can assume that the light direction is going this way. And if our light's coming this way, so the top left-hand corner, then our shadows must be the opposite direction, so the bottom right-hand corner. So we can see this a little bit easier on the coloured photo there, where the shadows are towards the right of each object. So I like to start with practicing my shading a little bit. When I am shading, I need to make sure that I'm holding my pencil on the side, so like this, not on the point like this. Okay, so any way you hold the pencil, which feels more comfortable, is easier. I like to hold my pencil towards the end when I'm shading instead of holding it closer to the tip. I find if I hold it towards the end, about here, that I can get more leverage and I can shade a little bit faster and smoother. Now, when I'm shading, neater shades are made by ensuring that your shading is done in the same direction. So if you're shading up and down, make sure in your picture that all of your shading is up and down and not up and down, diagonally, sideways. Okay, and also one other thing is making sure that you're not holding it on the tip, but you're holding it towards the side. Now, the shading that looks more smooth is done in layers. So the more layers you do, the smoother the shading looks. So if you're getting the dark sections, like around your objects, you need to make sure that that shading is at least 4 layers. So we look here, that really dark shading between each of those objects would be about 4. Down here at the bottom, underneath the table there, the table's edge, that would be about 4. And then if you look at the background, the wall, the peeling paint on the wall, it goes from 4 to 3 and 2 up here. So it gradually gets lighter towards the outside. So number 1, make sure that your light source is in the correct position. So we're looking at the top left edge. Number 2, you need to make sure that you've got mid-tones, dark tones, light tones and white to make sure that the objects on the table jump forward and don't fall into the background, so they come forward into the foreground. And number 3, make sure that you layer when you're shading. So when I start to shade, I like to start with the dark sections. So always referring to my photo, starting with the dark section. So I'm going to start around these objects, maybe even this table edge, around here, and I'm using a 2B pencil. So anything 2B or 4B, HB is probably a little bit too light and 6B is a little bit too light. And make sure that your pencil's not too sharp and it's not too blunt. If you're unsure, just practice in your visual art diary a little bit of shading first. And feel free to turn your page around if you feel uncomfortable in the direction you're shading. So I'm remembering that this dark shade gradually gets lighter towards the outside, and I'm not colouring in the dark shade all at once. I'm going to layer it. So I'm not trying to colour it really dark with firm pressure. I'm actually holding the pencil lightly. I'm trying to make it look, the shading look as smooth as possible. So I've done about 1 layer across that. You can see there it's starting to get a little bit dark in there, but I need it to get a lot darker. So referring to the photo. And when I'm shading, I'm not sure if you notice, but I shade in the darker sections a few more times and then I bring it out. So I do lots of colouring in the darker sections and then I bring it out. And I'm only holding the pencil, shading really lightly. The lighter you shade, the more even it is and the smoother your look will be when you finish. So always checking with your original picture how that's looking. So I'm going to start on this section here, which is quite dark, all up through here. So I've noticed in the cracks of the paint just in here, it's a lot darker. So this section down here is really dark, probably one of the darkest parts of the picture. I'm going to make sure that I shade it with lots of layers in this section. If you can't avoid shading in a different direction, do it nice and lightly so that you can't see the lines in your shading.